Welcome, time travelers. You are about to embark on a journey through space and time. Join us as we go back to the last great decade. Here is your host for the Time Traveler's Guide to the 80s, Jamie Benedict.
Hello, and welcome to the Time Traveler's Guide to the 80s, where we talk about everything from the safety dance to parachute pants. I'm Jamie Benedict, and in this episode, we will travel back to Christmas in the 80s to talk about two of my all-time favorite Christmas movies. So two of what I think are the all-time great. These are among the classics of holiday movies, came out in the 1980s. And the 1980s had a lot of great Christmas movies, but these two rank right at the top on just about everybody's list of holiday movies, and that is A Christmas Story, which came out in 1983, and Christmas Vacation, that came out in 1989. And for me, the holidays aren't complete until I have had the opportunity to watch both of those. So as a kid, I always loved A Christmas Story. How can you not love this movie? This is the story about a kid who just wants one gift. You are seeing the anticipation and the excitement of Christmas built up through the eyes of a child. And I think as kids, we all remember that sort of feeling of that one thing that we absolutely had to have. And it wasn't even about the presents all the time, but it was about everything that surrounded the holidays. And even when things were going bad, I think we were able to block out most of that and still focus on all of the great things that Christmas is about. And I think A Christmas Story demonstrates that. You know, we see Ralphie getting his mouth washed out with soap for swearing. He's being bullied. He's daring his best friend to stick his tongue to a frozen pole. You know, he doesn't know what to ask Santa for. He forgets when he gets up there. And every bad thing that's happening to him, and yet he never loses that wonder and excitement of the holiday season. But as an adult, I find myself having a greater appreciation for Christmas Vacation, which is the story about a father trying to provide the greatest Christmas ever for his family. And as a father, I have been in that spot where you just want everything to be great. And you have this anticipation of what they're going to react like. How are the kids going to feel on Christmas morning? How are they going to react to the gifts that they get and to the excitement in the air and things like that? So you try to create a lot of these memories for them. And in doing that, really what you're trying to do is recreate your childhood memories for your own children. And that's what we see Clark doing in Christmas Vacation. He's taking the kids back to when he was a kid and trying to put an entire Christmas together for them based off of his childhood. And again, even as things are falling apart, he continues to try to power through and build that great experience. So what is the perfect Christmas? The tree has to be on that list, the lights, the gifts, the dinner, and of course, the family. We're supposed to want to be with family during the holidays, right? Isn't that the deal? Isn't that what we're told? But our expectations usually exceed our reality. We glamorize this idea that being around family is going to be this magical thing. And in many cases it is, and in many ways it is. But there are some things that we don't think about. First thing, space. Having physical and mental space away from family or around that family. How do you work within the confines that you have? And that's a big deal with all of this pressure and all of this stuff going on. The expectations from everybody. Who's responsible for what? Who's bringing what to the dinner? Who's getting what gifts for what person? This is major pressure that people feel. And then you've got your personalities. You know, how do you get along with everybody in your family? And if you're trying to do the full family experience where you've got all the in-laws together, you've got cousins together, you know, and just, you know, everybody has that cousin Eddie. So who is your family's cousin Eddie? And just as a quick tip, if you can't think of who your family's cousin Eddie is, it's probably you. But we have all of these ideas in our head of all of this working perfectly, and it just doesn't always fit that way. And so between A Christmas Story and Christmas Vacation, we see a lot of the pressure that goes into developing the Christmas spirit and creating the perfect Christmas for our families. And I think it's always a big challenge for that. So I wanted to look at these two movies and have a reason to talk about them both for the holidays, because it's an 80s podcast. They came out in the 80s, and they're great movies. I mean, these are awesome. So here was the angle that I took on this. What if Christmas Vacation is really a sequel to A Christmas Story? Now, I know that they're not really sequels. I get that, but hear me out on this. So A Christmas Story stands on its own. It is obviously one of these movies that I think people can relate to. It has the possibilities for the continuation of Ralphie's story, but the charm of the movie is one of those things that it is a one-time thing. I think it stands on its own that way. Christmas Vacation is really already a sequel to a movie. It's really a direct sequel to Vacation. And even though it's not the next movie in the list, if you look at the Vacation movies, it was Vacation and then European Vacation and then Christmas Vacation came out. But this is a direct sequel to Vacation. And here's how it works. The writer and director of the Vacation series is John Hughes. And he took a writing job back in 1979 with National Lampoon magazine, where he wrote a short story called Vacation 58. And I'm going to link that story in the comments section for you if you want to check that out. But it was called Vacation 58, and that was the premise of the Vacation movie, which coincidentally came out the same year as A Christmas Story. Hughes then wrote a follow-up to that short story called Christmas 59. And you can see that referenced in the attic scene of Christmas Vacation when Clark's up in the attic and he pulls out the old box of home movies, and there's a label on one of them that says Christmas 59 on it. Oddly enough, I went back and I was just watching for these kinds of things, and when you look at the reel, it says Christmas 59. When you watch the video through Clark, it ends with Christmas 55. I don't know if that was a production error or if that was intentionally done, but the label is a reference to John Hughes' short story, and I'm going to link that also in the comment section. You can find both of them online if you want to read the stories, but yeah, they're great short stories, and they are very much connected to each other through the Vacation series. So now another comment on this not being a sequel is that we would not expect that Ralphie would change his name to Clark as he grew older. But let's suspend reality for just a little while and take a closer look at the connections between these two movies. First, let's start with the timeline. A Christmas Story is set in 1939-1940. And there's a couple of clues throughout here that lend itself to that time period of being 39 or 40, somewhere in there. There are a couple of mistakes that take us beyond the 1940 window, but we can look at most of what's going on there. Little Orphan Annie was aired on WGN radio in Chicago from 1931 to 1942. So we know it has to be somewhere in between there. There is a calendar on the wall in the kitchen that shows the year 1939 on it, so we can kind of use that as a gauge. Most of the cars in the movies are late 30s models. I'm going to tell you, I pulled that from the internet because I'm not a car guy, at least not to one that would recognize models in years that far back. But that's enough for me to say that this works for the timeline of being 1939 to 1940. And again, there are a couple of errors that are made in there that would make it a little bit later in the 1940s, but still not too far off on that. So at this point, Ralphie, our main character in the story, is 9 years old. Now, Christmas Vacation came out in 1989, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's set in 1989. There are no specific references to a year in the movie, but I'm sure there are some subtle hints either through the cars that are being driven or things like that. I didn't pick up on anything like that would clearly state this is what year it was set, but we can go with at least the mid 80s, sometime in there, and I think that would be fine. So if we assume that Christmas Vacation is set in the mid 1980s, Ralphie was 9 in, we'll say 1940, that would put Clark somewhere, or grown up Ralphie, somewhere in his mid 50s. It's probably not likely, but it's certainly plausible that Clark would be a grown up Ralphie in this particular case. That would also mean that he probably started having children at 40 years old, which removes some of the plausibility of it, but certainly, again, not impossible for that. Let's talk about the location of these two movies. The writer of Christmas Vacation grew up in a town called Hammond, Indiana. It was Gene Shepard, and it was right outside of Chicago on the Indiana side of the line, basically off of Chicago's south side. So Christmas Story is set in a fictional town of Homan, Indiana, which is based on Shepard's hometown of Hammond. This would explain the connection to the Bears for Ralphie's dad. And I kept going back through there. I thought there was a bigger connection to the Bears in there. But there is some question about whether Ralphie's dad was a Bears fan or a Packers fan in the movie.
I see that the Bears are playing Green Bay on Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Zudok's got tickets. I wish I had. Oh, well, he freezes Keystroff out there. The back of the
I slowly began to realize I was not about to be destroyed.
The Chicago Bears. Terror of the Midway. Oh, what a laugh.
From then on, things were different between me and my mother.
Well, more like Chicago Chipmunks, maybe, but Bears, never.
So he's being asked about the Bears game by his wife, and she says the Bears first. And as a fan of various sports teams, usually when I talk about a team that I support or a team that I root for, I usually say them first when I'm talking about them. So I always put my team first in that storyline. What I see in this is just a sports fan being critical of their team. And as a Chicago fan, I grew up in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I know that Chicago fans love their teams. They love the Bears. They love the Cubs. They love the Bulls. They even love the White Sox a little bit. But let's not get into that mess. But they are very critical of them because they really want the best there. So I see this more as a fan being critical of the team. But at this point in the timeline, between 1939 and 1941, the Chicago Bears were really good. I mean, like first place in the division good. I believe they won the 1940 championship in record fashion. It was ridiculous. I mean, this was a really talented football team. And he does make the mistake of calling them the terror of the Midway. And if you're a Chicago fan, you know they're the monsters of the Midway. That was what the Bears defense was referred to, even going back as early as the 1930s. So that part there is a little bit in question as far as whether or not he's a Bears fan. But just given the location, most likely he would have been a Bears fan just out of proximity. That probably would have been the case here. Of course, Christmas Vacation is set in the suburbs of Chicago where John Hughes was raised. So he was born in Michigan, but he moved to Northbrook, Illinois when he was a teenager. Hughes uses the Chicago suburbs for a lot of his movie settings like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, The Breakfast Club being among the most notable. But having that relationship to Chicago and the Chicago suburbs would put Christmas Vacation set right in that area. This would explain Clark's loyalty to the Bears. And I think there's also a connection to being able to say that it's not unreasonable to think that a person would stay somewhat close to home when they become an adult and start raising their children. Of course, I say that, and I live 3,000 miles away from my home, and I live down here in Florida, so I'm sort of the exception to maybe some of that rule. But a lot of people stay at least nearby, and we tend to be sports fans of the teams that our fathers are fans of. So growing up, I grew up watching Michigan football because my dad is from Michigan, and that was the team that we watched on Saturday afternoons when I was a kid. We didn't watch the University of Illinois. We didn't watch Northwestern. So we watched Michigan football, and I grew up a Michigan football fan. And then, of course, on Sundays, we grew up watching the Bears, and I grew up watching the Blackhawks, and I grew up watching the Cubs. So I am a fan of all those teams because that was handed down through my parents. So if we assume that Ralphie's dad is a Bears fan, then a grown-up Ralphie, or in this case Clark, could also feasibly be a Bears fan that lives really within maybe an hour or two of what home in Indiana would be, because it's just the suburbs of Chicago. It would probably not be unrealistic to think that he would stay that close to home. So proximity, the location of all of this, kind of sets the tone where this could be a sequel to A Christmas Story. Now, both Ralphie and Clark are daydreamers, and we see that throughout the movie with A Christmas Story. We know that Ralphie uses daydreaming as an escape. He daydreams basically throughout the entire movie. The first one is when he's dreaming about having the Red Ryder BB gun. He drifts into a daydream about saving his family from the evil Black Bart by shooting each member of Black Bart's gang as they're trying to hop over the fence in his backyard. He's taking them out with a BB gun, but he's playing the hero in all of this. He also dreams about submitting his paper to his teacher during this. And of course, he falls into a daydream there where he's talking about getting the A+++ along with his paper, and the teacher's reading about his wish of having a Red Ryder BB gun. And of course, the entire thing is all set in his fantasy. Daydreams are popular for kids. They're very common, and they're one of those things that I don't think is unrealistic to think that he would do. Now, as an adult, we know that Clark is a daydreamer also. And as an adult, we know that Clark is a daydreamer also. And we see him throughout, and this is a theme throughout the vacation movies, where he escapes his normal, everyday 9-to-5 life, like pretty much every adult wants to do. And he uses daydreaming as his outlet for that. So Clark gets lost in his thoughts, looking out his back window, trying to imagine the pool that he's getting ready to put in. One of the greatest things, though, about daydreaming is that usually we control the message. We control the thought, and we can keep it positive. And somehow Clark always lets this negative thought creep in to his mind with Cousin Eddie, and they're ruining the moment. But fortunately, he's able to kind of get his dreams back again, where he's the hero in all of this. He's providing the great Christmas gift for his entire family. And I think that's just a big part of the connection between Clark and Ralphie there. So let's talk about this, because I think this is another one that makes a difference or makes a connection between these two. And that is the reaction that they have to the bullies. So I think to some degree, we all deal with bullies pretty much at every age. It's just one of those life things. People grow up as the alpha and other people grow up, being the guy who's picked on. So you learn to deal with this. Some learn to deal with it by ignoring them. Others learn to use humor to deal with these issues. And some who have been pushed to their absolute limits resort to violence in all of this. And Ralphie has two bullies that are picking on him and terrorizing him and his friends. And he finally just snaps to put these bullies in his place. Well, as an adult, we see Clark dealing with these bullies as well. And he just is trying to figure out, how am I going to deal with this? And he's, kind of conflicted with himself and conflicted with his wife. I would love to make a connection that these are the same two bullies from his childhood, but the bullies in Christmas Story are clearly older than Ralphie. The bullies in Christmas Vacation are clearly younger than Clark, so we can't make that connection, unfortunately, because that would have really sold this sequel idea. But even as an adult, Clark is trying to figure out how to address this, and rather than just ignoring them, which we typically learn to do as we grow older, right? You just whatever, they'll go away. He tries to take them head on, just as young Ralphie did in A Christmas Story. It's just one of those things that we would see from a person that just hasn't learned their lesson, right? They're going to take people head on with this. Now, a couple of these are they're just great connections between the movie. It doesn't necessarily would make them a sequel, but it certainly is one that connects the two movies together. And we have all received just that awful, awful gift from someone in our family that just doesn't quite know us, or they think this is going to be great. And we look at him and go, what in the world were you thinking? Why would you think that I want that? And so Ralphie gets this awful gift from his aunt in the form of the pink bunny onesie pajamas. If these are not sold in stores, honestly, someone needs to be selling them, because I think there's a market for this, even if it's just as a gag gift. But he's told he has to model these because it's such a wonderful gift from his aunt, and he's trying to go through this whole idea in his head of, just please don't let any of my friends find out about this. And it gets to the point where even his dad tells him he looks like a deranged Easter bunny. And so you've got that kind of craziness there. And of course, we have Clark getting the horrible gift from his boss. And it's really, I don't even know if you could find a worse gift other than maybe a fruitcake. But it's not a fruitcake. It's almost as bad as a fruitcake, I think.
What the hell do you want?
I have a delivery for Clark W. Grisman. I was supposed to deliver it yesterday, but it fell between the seats. I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I can't believe it.
What is it? A letter confirming your reservation at the Nut House?
It's from my company.
Your bonus.
My bonus.
So Clark is going to be able to make here the announcement of the big gift for his family.
Yeah, I hope it's a fortune, Clark.
Is that you do, Eddie?
Oh,
I was afraid.
Are you gonna bawl all over it, or are you gonna open it?
Oh, I was gonna wait till tomorrow to tell you all this, but what the heck? With this bonus check, I'm putting in a swimming pool. That's it. That's the big one.
And here's where the wheels fall off of
I'm sorry.
this Christmas present.
I've been a little short with everyone lately. I've been waiting for this bonus. To make sure the pool goes in as soon as the ground thaws, I had to lay out the money in advance. And until this little miracle arrived, I didn't have enough in my account to cover the check I wrote.
tear the snow globe then, Dad. Yeah. Drum roll.
enough left over. I'm going to fly you all down here to help us dedicate it.
I can't swim, Clark.
I know that, Eddie.
Clark, what's wrong? Honey? It's bigger than you expected? Smaller? What is it?
It's a one-year membership in the Jelly of the Month Club.
Oh, God.
Clark, that's the gift that keeps on giving the whole year.
Yeah, that's really not the gift that keeps on giving the whole year. Now, I cut the clip off there before his profanity-laced tirade, I guess trying to keep this a family show. I don't know why I'm trying to keep it a family show, but if you wanted to have your children watch it, they certainly could, and or listen to the podcast version of this. But we saw as Ralphie is beating up his bully, he goes into a profanity-laced tirade, and then, of course, after finding out the awful news of the lack of Christmas bonus, we see Clark go into a very similar tirade. So very similar personality traits between Ralphie and Clark, or young Ralphie and older Clark in that particular case. So other than the fact that these two really are not connected, those two things I think connect both of them fairly well. Now, again, when you're a kid, you end up having people who are in control of your life. They are in control of everything that happens to you. And in this particular case, Ralphie's trying to kind of maneuver to the perfect Christmas present. And so now he gets a chance to talk to the man. He gets a chance to talk to Santa. And he's got all this pressure on him. That's the guy who's going to be able to get me this great Christmas present. And so he's up there with Santa, and he's getting the opportunity to say, and now all of a sudden he freezes, and he doesn't know what to ask for. And when he finally gets to that point, he's crushed by the response that Santa gives him.
What do you want for Christmas, little boy?
My mind had gone blank. Frantically, I tried to remember what it was I wanted. I was blowing it.
Come on, kid. How about a nice football?
Football? What's a football? Without conscious will, my voice squeaked out.
Football. Okay, get him out of here.
A football? Oh, no! What was I doing? Wake up, stupid! Wake up! No!
You'll shoot your eye out, kid. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
And, of course, we get the defeated look of someone who has just been taken down by the one person that can help them out. Now, Clark's Santa is not Santa in the true sense, but as an adult, he's more like our Santa because we're talking about Clark's boss here. And Clark is already making this decision to buy this ultimate gift for his family. And of course, he doesn't have the money now to do this. And his boss has taken that away from him with the lack of bonus check.
Family's first kidnapping.
You're fired. Where's the phone? I'm calling the police.
Just hold your wad there, fella. Clark had nothing to do with this. This here was my idea.
All right, he's still fired, and you are going to jail.
No, Eddie, it was my fault. I lost my temper when I got my bonus, and I guess I said a few things I shouldn't have.
Bonus? How did you get a bonus? I cut out bonuses this year.
Yeah, and thanks for telling us. I was expecting a check. Instead, I got enrolled in a jelly club. 17 years with the company. I've gotten a Christmas bonus every year but this one. If you don't want to give bonuses, fine. But when people count on them as part of their salary, Well, what you did is just plain...
Sucks.
Thank you, Russ.
So again, the mall Santa and Clark's boss don't quite make the connection to this being a sequel, but you can see the way that they handled them, the disappointment and things like that. And again, just that connection to personality traits there, I think can kind of lend itself to the idea that these could be sequels for each other. Let's get back into some of the things that might make this more of a sequel. And let's talk about choosing the right Christmas tree, because that is in Christmas Vacation, it's central to the entire storyline. But in A Christmas Story, it's still kind of a big deal. Like, this is one of the keys to making a great Christmas. And Ralphie's dad is going to go all out here. He wants the biggest, best tree that he can get for his family for the holidays. And he's looking for this big tree, even as it's being suggested to him that it might be too big for their house.
No better tree than this here tree. This here tree is built to last. Ain't no needles coming off this here tree. Okay, here's a tree. This here is a tree.
That's a little skippy in the front.
Well, you just put it in the corner.
Haven't you got a big tree?
Yeah. Hell, this ain't no tree. Here's a tree. This here is a tree.
Oh, wait till the dog sees that one, huh?
Don't you think it's a little large?
No. Christmas only comes once a year. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, well, how much?
I'll knock off $2 because I can see you're a man who knows his trees.
This isn't one of those trees that all the needles falls off, is it?
No, that's symbiosis.
The old man loved bargaining as much as an Arab trader, and he was twice as shrewd.
You know, Rudolph just found one of those brand new green plastic trees. Darn thing looks like it was made out of green pipe cleaners.
It's a very nice tree.
Yeah.
I'll throw in some rope and tie it to your car for you.
So we see he's being told that the tree is too big for the house, but it doesn't matter to him. He wants the biggest tree. And of course, as a child, if you're watching this, then this is one of those things that you remember your dad doing, the negotiation of buying that tree, selecting it, doing all of that together. So that's something that sticks in your memory. And so when you want to recreate that for your kids, then I think that's going to play itself out. You know, that's going to definitely manifest itself in that way. So Clark, we see doing the same thing with his family. In this case, though, he's gone away from the Christmas tree lot.
Didn't they invent Christmas tree lots so people wouldn't have to drive all the way out to nowhere and waste a whole Saturday?
They invented them, Russ, because people forgot how to have a fun, old-fashioned family Christmas and are satisfied with scrawny, dead, overpriced trees that have no special meaning.
My toes are numb.
You see, kids, this is what our forefathers did.
I can't feel my leg.
They walked out into the woods, they picked out that special tree, and they cut it down with their bare hands.
Mom, I can't feel my hips.
Clark.
Yes, honey?
Audrey's frozen from the waist down.
And that's all part of the experience, honey.
I think this is one of those things that we would look at and see that is definitely just out of his childhood. He's going to find the biggest tree, even though his son even suggests to him that wouldn't fit in our front yard. He's like, yeah, it's not going in our front yard. It's going in our house. So we see the growth there of young Ralphie into an older Clark and trying to create that feeling, the choosing the right tree, the smell, the feel, the look, the whole thing all coming around. I do think it's important to note that in both cases, they are very noticeably not going with a fake tree. So the first artificial tree was sold in 1930. So this definitely could have been a very popular and realistic option for people in 1939, 1940. But the fact that he was still choosing a real tree, and then of course we see Clark choosing a real tree in the mid 1980s, if you will, and we see that connection there between the two movies. I think is is a very important connection between both of them. I think you'll be able to see a connection to the Ralphie and Clark sequel in this next part here when we talk about the electrical wiring. There's so many things that we learn from parents as we're growing up, whether they be our mannerisms, our speech, whether it be stuff about sports, whether it's stuff about car maintenance, whether it's stuff about household maintenance. We basically model behaviors that we see growing up. And in A Christmas Story, we're watching as they're decorating the tree, and Ralphie's dad is clearly overloading the circuit. He's got, I couldn't even tell you how many plugs are plugged into there. Had to be 12 or 13, to the point where he blows the fuse and the entire house goes dark. And we would see Ralphie watching that behavior and saying, oh, well, this must be how it's done. Look, it's no big deal because, my dad did it. That's how I'm going to do it. And that's one of those things that I think we also see in Clark as an older person. He would have grown up watching that same format and learning from a person he looked up to. So when Clark lights up his house and he's got a million lights on there, he sets up the wiring in what is clearly the most ridiculous fashion possible. No normal human being would plug in this many plugs to a single outlet, causing an entire town to go dark, because we just don't do things like that. We don't work in that type of format. So he's just modeling what he learned from his dad. No normal person would do such a crazy lighting scheme. But Clark does it, and they have to go to the nuclear backup generator to get the entire town back online. And it's no big deal because, Clark doesn't think anything of it. Now, let's close this out with one of the most iconic scenes in any movie anywhere, and that is the famous Fragile scene. It must be Italian. And this is in A Christmas Story when Ralphie's dad wins the major award, which is a leg lamp. And this would be Ralphie's first experience with exterior illumination. So I know this is inside the house, but it's placed center in the windows so that everyone from the road is able to see the leg lamp as they're passing by. And as soon as he gets it plugged in, Ralphie's dad runs outside to see what this looks like from the road. And in doing that, he starts to generate or create a crowd of people. Where these people all came from is beyond me, but apparently at this time of night, everybody is out walking around, and they are now stopping to look at his leg lamp out there. And this is Ralphie's first experience of his dad looking at what everything looks like from the outside, and just the magnificent lighting that this has become. And even cars were stopping to take a look at it. But this is one of the classic scenes in the movie, and it's just one of those memorable moments as a kid where you would say, oh, yeah, my dad was really good at getting people to stop and look at our house and get that connection there. And so grown up Clark, he wants to be noticed as well, to the point where he's overdoing it with every light that he can find in his house. And once he has everything set up, he calls the family out to be his audience. Come and take a look at what I have done. And at one point in the movie, he even tells his dad that he learned everything about exterior illumination from him. And of course, we see the magnificence of this into a chorus of hallelujah when the lights come on and everyone is there to watch. So now he's able to feel the same pride that Ralphie's dad would have felt as everybody's paying attention to the lights on the house and everything that he has created for his family, and creating basically the perfect Christmas. So I realized that these two movies are not really part of the same storyline. I get that. But it's definitely something that allowed me to talk about both of these movies because they are great Christmas movies, and I thought it would be fun to take a different angle and a different twist on this storyline. And I hope you guys enjoyed the journey with me back to the 1980s to talk about Christmas Vacation and A Christmas Story and look at the connection between those two movies. So thank you guys for joining me for this Christmas episode of the Time Traveler's Guide to the 80s. Don't forget to join at the Facebook page at the Time Traveler's Guide to the 80s. Share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to sign up for my YouTube channel so you don't miss a single episode. And until next time, have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and we will see you guys in 2021. And as always, be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!
Welcome back and thank you for joining us in this most excellent journey back to the 80s. We hope that you have enjoyed this bodacious trip back to the last great decade and will travel with us again.